Today, I am talking to Marc Haskelson. Marc is the CEO, founder of Compliancy Group. And Marc, you and I met at the Inc. 5000 conference just a couple of weeks ago. Congratulations.
Oh, congratulations to you.
So this podcast is all about leaders in medical billing, but when we started talking, I realized that you have some really valuable information to share with our listeners. And so I wanted you to talk a little bit about compliance, about what does HIPAA compliance mean? And if someone does not have a compliance program in place, what are some of the steps they should think about or what they should do? Let's talk about that a bit.
Let's talk about it. Okay, so a couple of things there. Let's start off with just most of the time, people really misunderstand what HIPAA compliance is, right? You know, it is not uncommon. You see patients that think it's just about a HIPAA form, and you see whether it's a covered entity or the billing firm that is helping them. Often they think this is about, let's say, training. Right? It really is a combination of several things, but the real point is the U.S. government realized that medical information is very valuable, right? And it is stolen or it is appealing to the people who want to steal information, you know, almost at 8 to 10 times more valuable than banking information. So what happens is really the law is about the government asking vendors and the providers themselves to make sure that you're doing a set of really common sense things to protect the patient information we all deal with, right? And it does not have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be crazy. You know, sometimes it can be frustrating, right? But in the end, really what the government asked was take a look at your organization and on an annual basis, take a look at your what you're doing from a privacy perspective, what your administrative policies, procedures are, and then what are your security, what security protections do you have in place? And what the government really wanted to do is just say, look, no one is perfect. You know, especially in today's world, the threats that are more prevalent are just all over the place. So the days of, somebody being, bulletproof and never having a breach isn't real anymore. Right? You're going to have incidences, people, information that was shared in potentially a way that was a problem. So what the government really wanted was you to have a common sense, assess your risks, understand what they are, implement a plan to fix them, right? And same thing, they weren't expecting, the average covered entity or doctor's office to become Fort Knox. What they were saying is, look, you got to be a little smarter than leaving your file cabinets in the hallway. Right? Someone goes, excuses themselves of an exam room to go to the restroom. That's not a good plan, right? So that's really what it is, and the benefit that we try to help people understand is, if you are compliant and secure, you're giving better tools for your staff in how to serve your clients or patients. And the interesting thing that became as a byproduct of that, most organizations that are truly compliant and secure often are about 15% more profitable. They have happier employees and have a higher retention of their patients or clients. So this isn't just about satisfying a law. This is about how you can actually serve your clients and patients better and grow or increase the profit of your organization, which is, in the end, we don't do it. I don't expect people to love the idea of being HIPAA compliant, but hey, if it can help you run your business better and make a little bit more money and keep people happy, I would recommend it.
So you see this certification as a differentiator. Tell me about that.
So it's important to say that, so the US government, when they audit you, don't give you a gold star. Okay, so one of the challenges that both covered entities or doctors' offices in explaining it to their patients, right, who don't understand, they just see on the news bad things that happen because my doctor's office lost my information, right? You don't want to be a headline in your town, right? And then combined with that, 30% of the breaches that occur in the market are actually caused by the vendor. So think of it, you have somebody externally going through your billing records. 30% of the time, that's where the oops happens, right? So the government doesn't give us a certification, But what we found was people needed something, a third party to verify and validate that they had done things correctly, so that they could, it facilitated doing business, the parties to be able to do business with confidence. So yes, it is a somewhat of a unique thing to Compliancy Group that yes, we offer as it is part of what we do, is we don't just give you a tool to say, hey, look, check off boxes. We actually verify and validate when an organization has done, and then provide a certificate that they can differentiate. Why, and skip that it's Compliancy Group, what organizations have found is having that third party indicia on your website, just like you and I are very proud of our Inc. 5000 indicias. That is a third party validation. We've seen, so doctors.com did this. They said that on showing that you are truly compliant and secure, to increased patient conversion off a website by about 17%. And we've seen the similar differentiation for vendors as well, where that a firm that says, hey, why would you go with one firm or another, having a third party that said, look, this organization is secure and compliant, made a big difference in being able to win business and or keep business.
Very interesting. So you've been doing this for close to 18 years now. That is a long time to be in one industry. What changes have you seen, or how do you see the industry from where it was to where it is right now?
So the big thing that changed was originally the whole concept of compliance and security was really, for big organizations, right? Everyone would presume this is for your hospital, right? What has changed over time, some of it has been actual laws that have matured, that have changed. So for example, it's been a while now, but it was officially 2013, was where the law changed and said the doctor's office and all of their vendors must both be HIPAA compliant, okay? And that a doctor that fails to confirm the compliance, they're not responsible for their vendor's compliance, but failing to confirm that, it's called a business associate agreement, if you've ever heard that term. It's basically just says, hey, you have confirmation from your vendors that you have you're satisfying the law and that you have the right protections in place. So that's what that changed, which is in today's world, I think very, very important, is now all parties involved with healthcare have to protect this information. You can't point the finger and say it wasn't my responsibility. It has also dramatically changed enforcement. So if you, in the early days, enforcement was only the largest organizations. Now what you see is enforcement is all the way down to the smallest, one or two, 3-person offices, right? Where you're seeing, $10,000 fines for a dentist that posted on social media incorrectly. Okay, you're also seeing in the this year, there's been a tremendous amount of enforcement around with right of access, right? Patient says they want their records and you don't give it to them in a timely manner. There's a whole bunch of $50,000 to $100,000 fines that have been levied. But probably the thing that I think is the rate of audits at the federal and state level have gone up. The fines have gone up to north of $1 million on average, right? So I've shared some little ones to you so that the small organizations say, hey, this won't happen to me. No, they are absolutely looking. The real thing I think that is probably most important, which is not even necessarily that big a part of compliance, and that is the threats from a security perspective, ransomware, phishing scams, has really made just about every organization, from the smallest to the largest, is experiencing that threat. Right. And what's kind of interesting is there are some very simple, inexpensive steps that just about any organization can put in to protect themselves from the majority of those kind of threats. And so if you look at the last 15, 20 years, that's kind of what's evolved.
Okay, let us talk about that. What are some of the steps people can take to not be in that kind of mess in the future? So talk us through that.
Okay, so some of the obvious ones, the reason why the law exists, if you just follow the law, that is your best path. Okay, so the government spent a lot of time really trying to understand where the threat was and what was the reasonable approach you can take to protect yourself. But let me give you some examples of what those look like. look, do you have a clear set of policies and procedures that your staff know what they're supposed to do or not supposed to do? So if if a child comes in saying, I want to see the records of my elderly parents, or the flip of parents walk in and say they want to see the records of an 18-year-old child, does your staff know what to do with that? Okay. And but simple stuff. This is not a fancy 40-page document. This is, do you understand the law says there are clear things you are allowed to do and not allowed to do in those scenarios, right? When a policeman walks in, okay, people often were like, well, I can't tell you anything. No, the law does says, if there is a life at risk here, an emergency room situation or a police situation, yes, you are allowed to answer their questions. The concept is minimum necessary, i.e., yes, that person came in and they're epileptic, okay, versus, yeah, they came in epileptic and looks like they're loaded. Okay, clearly they've been drinking. I would skip the last part. I would stick to the medical part. On a more practical of an office, training, right? Whether you can get involved, a lot of the trade associations are providing free training. So there's a lot of places you can get it. I would obviously make sure you're getting the right information, that where it's coming from is a reputable source. Those are, let's say, the practical privacy administrative. On the security side, couple of mistakes we see very common. Look, things like if you have a free, if you ordered a cable modem from your local telephone provider, okay, chances are that's not secure enough. Okay, it was free for a reason, and a few dollars. This does not have to be, state-of-the-art high-end equipment, but a $10 a month piece of software to protect that you have the right protections in place is probably, is a good basic thing. Bigger organizations, different threats. Another one that I think is, and this is not training so much on privacy and HIPAA, one of the ransomware and phishing scams, which are probably the most common thing that we're seeing today, really get in the habit of your people. Look, there is no reason that you should be opening. You can actually turn around and call it a policy. Look, you should not be opening emails, from a source you don't recognize, right? If it seems too good to be true, or one of the newer ones is, a staff member gets an email from you as the president saying, I need you to go online and buy 50 gift cards, okay, on a Friday night. Seems a little goofy, doesn't it? Right? So a lot of it is very common sense, basic things that can be done, and they really don't have to be particularly expensive or complicated. And there are some good sources to do more research on that. For example, this is not as a plug to Compliancy Group. We provide hundreds of articles, if not thousands of articles, of free content on things that you can be doing in your organizations that have nothing to do with buying software, that are just basic things that you could be doing, the things that the average organization should know about.
Very cool. Okay, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. If talk to the billing company owner that wants to level up their compliance, and they're looking at different vendors out there that are doing this, what should that customer look for? What's important to look for?
So probably the most important, there's a couple of things that are in some ways equally important, okay? The law, you absolutely can be compliant and secure on your own. So I think one of the things I don't think people, by the way, larger organizations, the threat profile and risk profiles are very different. But if you're average, let's say, billing firm that has, on the smaller side, you can do this yourself, right? The OCR, Office of Civil Rights, which is, if you Google it, there's some good tools on there. But the core things that are important, and this is where, is this a good use of your time? And do you feel that you and your staff can do this as effectively as it should? If you're going to look at solution providers, you really want to look at an organization that is truly addressing all of the law. Okay, so one of the big misunderstandings we see is tools that are just doing a security risk assessment. Okay, yes, security is a very important part of compliance, but it is really only 1/3 of one of the 3 rules that are required under the law. So you really want to make sure someone is truly going to help you look at your administrative, how you run the business, privacy, which is more policies and procedure related, training related, and then ultimately the actual security and or physical security of the organizations. You want to make sure you're looking at the, assessing all of the risks who you do. The other one that I think is really important is it's one thing we see a lot of people, they're like, hey, I downloaded I have a training that I do once a year, and I downloaded something off the web. Okay, awesome. You're going in the right direction. But you really want to make sure that in the end, you have the ability to prove what you did and what you didn't do. Okay, because the way the law is enforced, and there's actually something called the safe harbor law. Okay, this is a new thing. It says you can have a horrible incident or breach. You can make a totally horrible mistake, lose millions, hundreds of thousands of patient records. But if you can prove that you were compliant, that you had satisfied the law, you'd done what's called a good faith effort, then you will not be fined. You are excluded from fines from the government. Okay, so having all of that together in a way that is simple, easy. That let's be realistic. Whether in this case a billing firm, you're not in the business of compliance and security. You're in the business of helping people with their billing problems, right? So you don't want this to consume a huge amount of your time. You want this to be something that's simple, addresses the total requirements of the law, and then your ability to really prove what you did are the three biggest things that we see. People, they spend money on something, and then unfortunately, when they do have a problem, they're unable to really prove what they did or didn't do.
Okay, that's a good answer. Tell us like a range of what you think is like if someone's deciding to start with this service because a service makes the most sense. You can prove that you hired a company, and that's kind of protects you from the safe harbor, right? I made an effort. I hired an organization, so I'm doing my part. What do you think is the range on the low end and the high end? What should somebody, a mid-size or small organization, be paying for compliance annually?
No, it's a great question. So there's usually, let's say, there's kind of three flavors of this. Okay. The do-it-yourself, an online checklist type approach, and that's usually $1,000 a year. Okay, $1,000 to $2,000 a year. There's more of the let me do the opposite end of the spectrum, and then that's probably easier to find the middle. The opposite end of the spectrum is hiring a consultant or a cybersecurity expert to do this for you. That is could be $50,000. Right. And it's usually, there is benefit of both, right? So I don't want to kind of say that one is right or wrong, but it really does to do with, in the end, you need to do something, right? So I think that everybody would rather see you do something to protect information than nothing. In the middle, what you find is organizations, and this is more, let's say, where Compliance Group sits, is where it is you are being given a tool that maybe answer question, check off the box kind of thing, but also provides you the guidance that's necessary for that. Because most organizations, the problem is, so you're told you're missing something. How do I fix that? Right? There's usually a couple of ways to fix something. One might be inexpensive, one might be thousands of dollars. So you really want an organization so the middle of the road is a tool that gives you good guidance on how to remediate the challenges. And those, for small to mid-size should be, $25,000 to $5,000 to $8,000, right? And you may have noticed here, this isn't, $100,000 a year problem, okay? Or I'm sorry, the problem could be very expensive if you do it wrong, but the actual solution is not, it shouldn't be. This is something that I've always felt very passionate about. Was this, you mentioned that I've been at this for a long time. The problem was 10 years ago, your choice was really only a very expensive consultant, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people just didn't do this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's why you see a lot of organizations that kind of, really screwed up and had patient information stolen or corrupted. And that was a shame.
You're so right. Okay. Well, I'm glad that you have something that solves this problem, because it is a big problem, and we see it all the time, obviously. And, it's great that we have the ability to talk about it. Okay. Let's switch gears for a moment and talk about your fast growth. I see behind you, you've got, how many times have you been on the Inc. 5000? And how did you do it?
Yeah, so we were very proud of, we've made Inc. 5000 fastest growing 3 years in a row, which was very exciting for us. And if I was to go into our history, yeah, we have been very fortunate. Some of this is obviously our efforts, right? And how we did it was we really focused for years. We've been focusing on the belief that if the more educated the market was, right, both doctors' offices and the vendors who serve them, that was good for everybody. Okay, so in our case, we spent a lot of time and effort in really making sure with trade associations, publications, influencers, vendors like like yourself, where we truly want to speak about, in a we're not trying to sell here. We're trying to really educate people as to why this is an important issue, how they can fix it very cost effectively to benefits thereof. So that really has been the underlying thing that drove our growth. Listen, we're also tried to build a good solution that solved the problem and keep it cost effective. When I first started this, I had some people that other entrepreneurs I knew were like, why would you could charge $30,000 for this? Why would you sell this for a couple of $1,000s? And I said, why? Because look, this is a big problem across a lot of people are challenged by this. And if we can help this problem go away so that they can grow their businesses, then that's good business for all parties involved. And that's really what drove us. The other one is actually, which is on the other side. I am probably in many cases more proud of the best places to work. Inc. also gave us best places to work 3 years in a row. So in the end, we may have a good idea and a good plan, but it is the team that work for the organization, that really is what makes it valuable, and that's really what's been driving our growth. So as much as I'd like to say it was a brilliant idea by me, it was not. It's a group of really smart people who are making customers happy. They're happy, so they make customers happy.
I love it. It's so great. So great to meet such a driven entrepreneur and purpose driven, that you put your employees first. And it's really nice to see. Okay, as we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to share that you didn't already share? And then if not, where can people find you?
So compliancygroup.com is where you can find us. Please do and do know that you can come to our site, and there's thousands of articles and pages of data for you that are free, that are educational. We actually have a free HIPAA training that is on our site as well. And please do take us up on that. Probably just I think we've covered it, but I'll reinforce this. Don't do this. Often people have the attitude is I have to do this. It's like that it's a requirement and it kind of it sucks and I have to do it. Do not look at it that way. When this is done correctly, this will make your people happier, your patients and clients happier, and it will make more money for your organization. So, as you talked about different ways of doing it, ultimately all have merit, right? So, but please don't, there's amazing how many organizations I've spoken to, like, hey, we got this, we didn't have to worry about it. No one's really enforcing this. And I'm like, that's not the issue. The issue is, do you really want to wake up on a Tuesday morning and find out that you cannot access your medical, you cannot access any part of your business, ransomware attack, okay? Or the mistake that was made by somebody that was an innocent mistake, has now put you in a position where you have a class action lawsuit against you and can in essence destroy your reputation of your organization and ultimately your livelihood. Right? Whether you built a business as a billing firm or you're, a doctor who's invested, hundreds of thousands of dollars in your education, that really is a shame. If you could have just a little bit to protect that, please do it. And like I said, however you do it, whether you just, please don't think you have to go to Compliancy Group. But we work with many of like the HBMA. We do work with associations where we give free content and there's no strings attached.
That's wonderful. Marc, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
No, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your clients and partners.